There's a version of ancient humans you've been shown your whole life, hunched over, grunting, dragging a club. Almost every textbook image of ancient humans gets this completely wrong. Here's the twist. Some of these ancient humans had bigger brains than you do right now. Not smaller, bigger. On average, Neanderthal brain size actually edged out modern Homo sapiens. And that's just the first thing the textbooks left out. These ancient humans weren't wandering around Europe by accident. They were built for it. Thick bones, wide chests, powerful arms designed for close-range combat with animals that could kill you in seconds. Their skeletons show injury patterns, almost identical to modern rodeo riders, which tells you exactly how these ancient humans were hunting. Not from a safe distance. Up close, against something enormous, again and again. Look closer at the skull of these ancient humans and you find even more evidence. Their bodies were engineered for survival rather than crude by default. A heavy brow ridge, a wide nose built to warm freezing air before it ever reached the lungs. A stocky frame that retained heat far more efficiently than the leaner build most Homo sapiens carried at the time. Every one of these features solved a real problem posed by an ice-aged landscape. None of it was random. Their limbs were shorter relative to their torso compared to ours. Another cold adaptation feature seen in modern populations that live in extreme climates today. In other words, these ancient humans weren't a rough draft of a modern human. They were a finely tuned version, shaped by one of the harshest environments our genus ever had to survive. And here's where the old story really falls apart. These ancient humans controlled fire. They made sophisticated tools, not crude rocks, but carefully shaped implements suited to specific tasks. Some crafted using a technique so precise it required planning several steps ahead before a single strike. Excavations in Iraq turned up something even harder to explain away. A body buried with what appears to be flowers laid across it. That's not the behavior of a mindless brute. That's grief. That's ritual. There's more. Some of these ancient humans appear to have made pigments, possibly for decoration or symbolic use, long before anyone assumed a non-human species could think in symbols at all. Evidence from certain sites even suggests they used eagle talons as jewelry, deliberately selected and modified, not randomly scavenged. That's not survival instinct. That's aesthetic choice. The kind of thing we usually reserve for describing ourselves. Their hunting strategies were just as sophisticated as their tools. These ancient humans didn't simply stumble onto prey and attack. There's evidence of ambush tactics, of driving animals toward natural traps like cliffs or bogs, of coordinated group efforts that require communication and shared planning. Taking down an animal many times your own body weight at close range with a wooden spear isn't something you do through brute force alone. It takes strategy, timing, and trust in the people beside you. There's also the question of language, something scientists debated for decades. A specific bone in the throat called the hyoid bone, found in the remains of these ancient humans, is almost identical in shape to our own. Structurally capable of supporting the kind of complex speech we associate exclusively with modern humans. They also carried a version of a gene linked to language processing in people alive today. None of this proves they held conversations the way we do, but it strongly suggests these ancient humans weren't limited to grunts and gestures. coordinating an ambush against a wounded bison, choosing which flowers to place over a body, deciding which talon looked right for jewelry. All of that gets a lot easier to explain if these ancient humans could actually talk to each other. So if these ancient humans were this capable, why aren't they still here? Around 45,000 years ago, Homo sapiens started moving into the same regions these ancient humans had called home for over 300,000 years. For a while, the two groups actually overlapped. We know this because their DNA is still inside us. If you have European or Asian ancestry, a small percentage of your genome came directly from them. But coexistence came with a cost. Both species were hunting the same animals, competing for the same land, sometimes working the exact same valleys and river systems for food. Homo sapiens lived in larger groups with wider social connections, which meant knowledge and supplies could move across long distances when times got hard. A useful technique discovered by one community could reach another group hundreds of miles away within a few generations. These ancient humans lived in smaller, more scattered communities, which made it harder to recover from a bad season or a brutal winter. If one group here suffered a collapse, there wasn't necessarily a wider network ready to absorb the survivors or pass along a solution that had worked somewhere else. Then add in the climate. It kept swinging between extremes, cold snaps followed by warm spells, reshaping the landscape again and again. Genetic studies show these ancient humans had unusually low diversity near the end, meaning their numbers were already thinning out before the finish line even arrived. By around 40,000 years ago, they vanished from the fossil record entirely. Not from one dramatic event, from a slow combination of pressures stacking on top of each other until there simply weren't enough of them left to recover. Here's the part that should really sit with you. These ancient humans survived Ice Age Europe for 300,000 years. That's longer than our entire species has existed. They hunted megafauna most modern humans would run from. They mourned their dead. And the story we tell about them is still dumb caveman. Compare that number for a second. Homo sapiens, our own species, has existed for roughly 300,000 years total. These ancient humans held their ground through that same stretch of time, through repeated ice ages, through landscape that transformed again and again. And they were still standing when we showed up at their doorstep. If anything, the timeline suggests they were the more battle-tested branch of the human family, not the weaker one. And it wasn't a fast collapse either. Genetic studies of late-stage populations of these ancient humans show small, fragmented groups with declining diversity, the biological signature of a population already running out of room to recover. Add repeated climate swings on top of direct competition with a rival species that had wider social networks and faster access to resources across long distances, and the outcome starts to look less like inevitability and more like an accumulation of bad timing. Maybe the real lesson isn't about them at all. Maybe it's about how easily a smart, capable, or resilient population can still disappear when the odds quietly stack against it for long enough. Being well adapted to one world doesn't guarantee survival once that world starts changing, faster than a population can keep up with. If this completely changed how you picture Neanderthals, hit like. Tell me in the comments what surprised you most about these ancient humans. And subscribe, because next time we're digging into a group of ancient humans, we only know from a single bone found deep inside a Siberian cave.